Very officially, I would like to say welcome to the presentation to NSI Output Manager. Just a few things to the beginning. My name is Roberto Rocci. I'm the Business Development Manager and Output Manager in Europe. And I want to show this is a technical session, so I have a presentation which would guide us a little bit through the product, but I will jump in and out of the real product. Then there is a saying which is seeing is believing, so we will have a look at the product itself. I've at the moment got all the microphones, your individual microphones enabled. I will switch them off in a moment. Now, in the pane you've got from GoToMeeting, there is a question section. Generally, I would prefer if you questions straight away. And I have a little window here which pops up those questions. So if you have a question, at any point during the presentation, just type it into that little window, and either I'll answer it straight away, or at the end of the session, I'll look up those questions and then we'll answer them. And so I'll mute all the microphones from now, and then we'll start the presentation, if that's okay. Right. So the first question is, of course, what is Output Manager? And Output Manager is, of course, an output management tool, which is effectively a spooler. And this spooler enables you to receive data from any host or any place in an organization and deliver that information, again, to any kind of device or type of destination where you need that information. Now, typically, of course, we're talking about hosts and printers, but there is so much more to this, whether this is an archiving system or an ERP system. There is a lot more to this. Now, from a marketing point of view, we have modeled this into 3 different parts, and to deal with the market segments. We have office, enterprise, and production. But it is still the very same product, so no matter whether you start with this product, for example, in a small office environment, or whether you need office and an in-house print room, a CAD environment, or you need a production environment, which is high-volume transactional print. It's the same product, and you can upgrade it and buy modules. They all fit into the same product. So let's have a quick look at a typical output environment, what a big corporate company would typically see. And if I just start here on the top left here, you see with an office environment, typically, even in the office environment, you have people which are working in the office, you have people which work from home, you have people who bring their own devices into the company, which are typically tablets or smartphones, but you have remote workers, etc. And these people use a variety of different printer drivers which sit on print servers, and they are connected, of course, to all the office devices. Typically, we're talking here local printers, network attached printers, and MFDs. Totally separate in this company, we have, of course, the back end, maybe an AS400 or a host, which creates high volume invoices and pick lists and all sorts of documents. And typically, they would be connected to a high volume production printer. But through the years, these different environments have always been separate, and they still to today in most companies are totally separate, and you can't connect the two together. Now, where we sit with NSI Output Manager, where a lot of the strength are for Output Manager, is that we have this one system that can connect all of those environments. So again, the office, the enterprise, and the production environment, and connected to all of those destinations where information and documents need to be delivered. Now, it's not just a connectivity tool, it can do so much more. For example, I can apply business rules. And a business rule in the office would typically be, if a job is bigger than 50 pages, maybe route it to the print room or to the MFD rather than a local network printer. A business rule in a host environment could be that if a job is more than 10,000 pages, you might want to split it into chunks of 5,000 pages, and you want to add a barcode so you can drive an enveloping machine. So the business rules could be very, very different depending on the environment, but as I said, it is one product, and we have this focal point of control which gives us connectivity, rules, and so much more. For example, enterprise accounting. For the first time, a company can now also find out very quickly how much they're printing, not only in the office, but also their system print, which departments, and allocate costs. Talking of costs, just a second. Moving forward. Here we are. Talking of costs, I know this is a technical session, but I'll just mention this very, very briefly, is why people should be at all interested in this is there's a Gartner report which says that companies spend up to 3% of their revenue on document output activities. And by really looking at this all together, there is a huge saving potential of roughly about 20% of those 3%. And even a small company here like this Borough of London, of Barking and Dagenham, which is a company in London, is a customer of mine. Even they, a small company, can here save up to about £150,000 per annum. Now, very quick on the costs as well. Where are these costs? We all, of course, understand the cost of the devices itself and the consumables. We're looking at the printers, the paper, the toner. But so much more of this cost is actually involved, which is not that obvious. The cost of a print server. And there are companies who have easily 25 or 50 or 100 print servers. And there is, I saw another report somewhere which tags the cost of a print server at about £3,000 minimum per annum just to run it, to maintain it, to keep it serviced, etc. So the cost of a print server is huge. And as you see, there is a huge list of other saving potentials. Now let's have a quick look at the corporate printing issues. And this is a list which was generated in the UK. I do believe that since there's a lot of European people today on this call, it might not necessarily be all exactly the same as in your particular territory. However, I think generally speaking, it's probably these are the issues, and I'll pick out a couple of them. Rules-based printing. A lot of people want to apply some rules because print volumes are still going up. Particular on color and in the office, so applying certain rules will certainly save money. And security, mobile printing, etc. There is archiving, complex system integration. So there are a lot of different subjects. And for all of this, you can buy specific tools which will help you do that, whether this is now an archiving system or mobile solution or a bit of office follow me solution. But of course, we as NSI Output Manager, we can provide most of that or pretty much all of that in one integrated solution. And that means one solution, one server, one set of training, one contract for the maintenance and so forth, rather than having 4 or 5 products which are put together with a lot of customization, and if something goes wrong, then there's a lot of finger pointing. Here we have one supplier, one product. And it's just a different graphic interpretation of what I've showed earlier. So we of course have all the Office applications, we support mobile print, and there are other WebEx sessions here where we do more specific things on mobile, because this is a great subject for us, but also line of business applications, typically like SAP, and of course all the mainframe and host connectivity side. So all of that data we can get into Output Manager, and we can use Output Manager to distribute and to deliver the information to any kind of device, whether it's a production printer, a small desktop, an MFD, and it does not matter which brand it is either. And just to complete this picture, most of you will of course know AutoStore, which is NSI's flagship product for many years, and there is a bidirectional connector between Output Manager and AutoStore, and that gives us a huge range. For example, for AutoStore customers who want to do some input scanning or some capture on a device, on an MFD typically, they can use Output Manager tools, for example, the secure release or the device authentication, to authenticate on the device, to lock the device first. On the other side, we can use, for example, a print which comes from the Office. We can deliver it to a printer, but we can also automatically send it through AutoStore connectors into something like SharePoint or IBM Content Manager. So there are existing connectors already there. So between the two products, there's a huge harmony and one accounting system again. So this is some space to watch here in the future. Right, so what sets us apart? As I said, there are individual tools which can do some of the functions I've described earlier, but the big differences here are that we have the complete Office functionality, but for example, we can seamlessly redirect jobs into a CAD print room. And many Office tools, they can redirect it into a print room, but in the print room itself, the trays don't map, or there are, you need a different tool then to actually deliver it and print it on the printer. With our solution, we will deliver it to any printer, and automatically all the job properties will be correct on the time of printing when you release that job. Now, I'm going to show you this printer driver, so we're going to jump out of this stage of the presentation. Just a second. And now we'll have a look at the product. Now, in order to do that, I've just opened a document, and this is just happens to be our installation guide, and I will show you now our printer driver. Right, here we can see our printer driver, and what we see right here on the top is a superset pretty much of all the features available. Most customers would want to reduce those options, and for example, if you're not interested in watermarks, you would take this complete tab out. With finishing, you might want to show some of these functionalities, but you might want to take some of them out and gray them out. So you have different options on customizing this printer driver. It does obviously, you can connect this to the Active Directory groups. So we import Active Directory LDAP user groups, and then depending on the association, you as a user or as a group or as a department, different people in the organization might see a different version of this driver. One thing which I've done here is I've created a new tab, and in this new tab, I've added a few things which not necessarily have to do with printing. for example, I can add a delivery option. If I know it's going in the print room, I could say, well, I only need it in 4 days' time, and therefore the cost will be affected. It will be cheaper to print it in 4 days as if I would want it back on the same day. And these are options which are not given by Output Manager, by our product. These are options the administrator can create themselves. Very easily you can say, I want to print it and archive it, or I want to add, if I know this is going to be a letter, I want to maybe send it as recorded delivery or something like that. So I have all sorts of options that I can build and add into this. And this printer driver creates a PostScript file with a job ticket. Now let me just print this. Now typically what people want to see in an office environment is, of course, that the print gets submitted, and if the print does not apply to some rules, for example, it's over a certain page count, then that a pop-up appears and shows us this cost. So here we have a pop-up, and this pop-up is also, of course, freely configurable. And here I show that if I printed it on the printer, which was a desktop printer I wanted to print it to, it costs £2.52. And if I printed in the print room, it would cost 56 pence. I give them, I have a lot of options here to change this pop-up. I don't know in how much detail you would like to see this. There is a, actually there's a question here. So, typically with job routing, I provide this as an option, but you can actually just automatically route things into the print room and send a message back to the submitter and say your job has moved to the print room. But generally in England, certainly people want to have options and don't really want to be told what to do, but you want to gently move them to do the right thing. So I still give them the option not to keep the routing to their original destination, and the reason for that could be because the print room is closed, because it's 6 o'clock at night and the print room, the people have all gone home. Another typical thing you might want to do is associate costs or with this print job. For example, if you would be in a legal environment, you might want to have a customer list here. If you're maybe in a normal corporate environment, you just want to keep it to a department. So depending on what kind of company you are, this could look very different, and this could be also multiple levels. So for example, in a legal company, again, you could have your customer NSI, and under NSI you have 3 different projects with different project codes. You can also secure this. For example, if I submit this, it will come up with an error message because I need to put in a PIN code. So here I'll put in a PIN code, and then I can submit this job. Now, from a user perspective in the office, that's pretty much all they see. The only other thing they would then see, if I go back here to my presentation, would be the user interface on the device. And so we have a unified embedded client. This will be released actually, part of it has been released, and other parts will be released within a week or 2. And this unified device, embedded device, is obviously on the MFD, and there you would normally walk up, you authenticate yourself, typically with a proximity card, and then you would see here, for example, your print jobs. The screen is, of course, touch screen, so you can select the jobs, you can print them, but also you can change some options. So there are features here within the product, for example here, where you can change the settings, and so while you're standing at the device, you submitted maybe 1 copy, but now you need 10 copies for a meeting. You can still change the copy count, and the accounting, etc., will of course be correct. Now, those people of you who know AutoStore very well, you will also recognize the screen on the bottom, which is the scan to email, and that's got a bit of a facelift. And the reasoning is, of course, that we want to have the same user experience. And on the devices, no matter whether this is a Ricoh or a Konica Minolta or a Xerox device, it's all single sign-on, so you can toggle between those two applications without going in and out or without having to re-authenticate yourself. So you could have a scan workflow and a print workflow with one authentication, and the look and feel will of course be the same. The look and feel is also the same between all the different device brands. While we're on devices, I would like to show you a couple of other interfaces. And we have, of course, a mobile interface, and one of them is that you can just simply send in an email, and you can use the inbuilt services. In case of iOS, this would be the Bonjour service, or AirPrint as it's often referred to, and therefore the destination, our output manager, just appears as a destination in the printer menu, and you can just simply send an email in, and if you're known to the system, then your job will appear in your follow me queue. If you're not known to the system, like in this little example here, we can automatically send you back an email with a PIN code and some instruction to maybe walk up to the reception desk and be able to punch in your authentication, your PIN, and release your jobs there, or maybe in the training center, so you can then limit it as well, the kind of devices where this might apply. In this case, there's an email with an attachment, a PDF, so every printer can of course print this, but if you would email in an Excel sheet, then we also have the appropriate tools which will convert Excel and Word and open Word formats and graphic formats, etc. Appropriately to print on all those devices. On the right-hand side, we see this iPad, and there is another user interface. This is called a web kiosk, and it's a web-based interface, and we can use that for a variety of things. We can use this if you would effectively glue this to the MFD or to a network printer. Then, if the printer hasn't got its own display, we can use this as a release mechanism for that device. But also, a user could use this very same interface and have a look at the job status. For example, if this has gone into the print room, we can see that the status is queued, or the status is it's printed. And we can also send back a message to the user saying, your job is now ready for pickup. Right. Now this I will show you again on the system itself. Now this is what Output Manager looks like, and we've had a look a little bit about at the moment. You can see on the bottom left here there is a navigation pane. So if I want to look at the reports, I press reports. If I wanted to look at my input sources, I look here at my input sources. If I want to look at my destinations, which our printers tends to be, then I look at these. So the other windows change according to my navigation pane. Now if I look at, for example, input sources, and I look, for example, very specifically here into this Windows queue, then I can see, for example, the job that I've just printed into the system. So this was the job I printed into the system, and I could just basically release this job either by drag and dropping it onto a destination or by doing something with this. I want to show you one more little workflow, which is, I want to go into mental in because we've looked at Office functionality now, but I want to show you something else. And for that, I'm looking at some customer invoices, and this is a telephone bill for a mobile phone, and it's variable texts, variable length. So one customer has 6 or 7 pages, the next one has only 2 pages. Also within here, we have 1 or 2 people which have more than one mobile phone, and therefore at the moment they are in the beginning and maybe in the middle and at the end of the print file. In reality, that would mean that they would get free invoices and in free envelopes sent to their house. And so they have 3 times the postage cost. And as a company, of course, you don't have only 3 times the postage, you have the enveloping costs, the machine costs, and all those things which are there. And if I close this and take this, let's have a look at what's happening. I've basically copied it into an input folder, and now I'm looking in here where my input source is, and I've automatically created a workflow. And this workflow would look at this invoice, and then it will split it into document sets. So every customer will now be split into a different document set. And then, because I want to reorder this into a different way, if I look at one of these invoices now, I've also added, for example, here a header. And as you can see now on the left-hand side here, this invoice is really only 2 pages now. And so this was an automatic business rule for production printing. I have also created another rule, which is an ad hoc rule. This is something I can pass on to the operator. And here I will merge them all together again. And I'm not only merging them in the same order, I'm merging them, I'm changing the order. So I'm putting all the same people into the same envelope. So they're actually in sequential order now. And my next step would be then to add a barcode for the mailing machine. I haven't done this now in this particular case, but if we have a look at this now, again, we have a job which is the whole length. And I think there is a, I'll just find this, I think Mrs. Barclay, yeah, here we are, Mrs. Barclay. And she has now multiple invoices and they are now in sequential order. So the next one will also be Mrs. Barclay. There you go. So you can use Output Manager really to change the content of a document, to make it production ready. You can use it for converting data from one format to the other. There's a lot of things you can do. The last thing I want to show here is just the reports. As you can see, there are many inbuilt reports in the system. And I've got a couple of screenshots, but just to pick out any one, most active device and since this is actually installed on my laptop, you can see there is not much really in there, but you can see here there is a report. There are of course graphic reports, summary reports, all the typical reports you would expect. And with this, I will go back to the presentation. And show a couple more highlights. So, other quick things I'd like to just mention here is we have a Fiery connector, many tools which have to do with print rooms. As soon as you pass on jobs to something like a Fiery controller, it's like throwing it over the fence. So if the operator in Fiery changes the copy count from 1 to 1 million, then the accounting softwares don't tend to know at all what's happened. With Output Manager, this is very different. We have a proper Fiery connector. So anything somebody does on a Fiery controller, we know about, we can account for. You've seen a little snippet of the production print features like the transforms, the re-engineering, the process automation. We have many customers who use Output Manager exactly for that. just to simplify processes, to reduce the amount of envelopes they send out, to add letterheads, and so forth. So there are so many different diverse projects. Each one tends to be different, but of course it's all using a standard tool set within Output Manager. Enterprise accounting, of course, we have this one solution which can do accounting and cost allocation between office environments, the print room, and production print, which is your system-generated print. Here's just an example of a more complicated workflow. In this case, this is a workflow from Thomas Cook, and if you used to buy a holiday with Thomas Cook, you would have had a lot of different communications from them, and we help them to consolidate them into one single document. And on the bottom right here, you can see, you probably can't read this, but there are different delivery mechanisms. One of them is maybe email, the other one is if it's overseas, it goes to maybe TNT or Deutsche Post, or in England we have the Royal Mail, and we have different services. So we split by different postal options in order for them to also gain cost savings. So here we go, we've transformed and helped them to put different documents into one, which finally brings us to the reports, which I've kind of already mentioned. There are reports available. There are about 60 in the system. Probably more important is we use SQL as base, and these are open SQL tables. So if you don't like our reports, you could easily create your own using maybe something like Crystal Reports. But it also means that very quickly you could connect our system to a management information system, or there are various systems which show you maybe on a big screen in the company some kind of information, whether this is like, there are lots of products out there for help service desks, etc., to display the status of all the printers in the fleet and that sort of thing. So by looking into the right tables, you can easily integrate with those kind of products as well. Wow, which brings us to the end of the presentation. So let me see, there is a question here. Oh, there's lots of questions, so I'm opening up. And I will also switch on the microphones now again. That will take me just a second. Right, just a second. I'll unmute you all. In case you wanted to ask a question. And right. Now, one question was, we support Android, and yes, of course, we support Android as well. Android, there isn't the equivalent of the Bonjour service, so there are plenty of Android apps which support printing, but also there is a whole nother layer to this, because we have NSI Mobile, which also has a printer driver app, which is of course connected to Output Manager, and this gives you, on top of just the capability to print, also a ticket option. So here we can, you can not only say print, but you can say I want it in duplex, and I want it with on letterhead, and all sorts of other things. Can you change settings from color to white? To black and white, I suppose. Yes, you can. That's a typical Office functionality, whereby if somebody prints typically from maybe Outlook or Lotus Notes, that you want to limit the output and force it to be black and white, or mono rather than color. So the answer to that is yes. Right. All, by the way, it seems that there was some audio issues here. All the attendees were muted. I did mute all the attendees, so I hope you all heard me. Can you force duplex printing? Yes, you can. You can force duplex. And of course, if you have a mixed environment with duplex printing, you can also add blank backs so that the duplex works if you're sending 5 or 6 different jobs with variable length. I'll mute you all again when we're talking. We might as well just use the scripting. Right. Does it support RFIDs and registration and PIN codes? Yes, it does. RFID is, of course, only one card reader type. We support, in fact, every card reader type that is supported by the MFD itself. So every manufacturer has a list, and RFID is, of course, a very well-known one, but there are a huge list of card readers we support, and it's really not us that support it, it's the device itself. So if the device supports it, we support it. You can have, for example, the card authentication and PIN, or for example, Windows domain logon, or a combination of both. You can have card and PIN and something else. So you can have multiple. Can Output Manager add marks for folding devices? Yes, it can. Whether this is a barcode or an OMR mark, or maybe a little black box for a scan mark or something. So any document content can be changed or added. So the answer to that is yes as well. Brilliant. Okay, I think there's no more questions at this stage. Let me say thank you very much for listening. On the bottom left here, you can see, of course, my contact details. Please do send us your comments, any questions. Get in touch with myself or maybe with your local sales manager. All I can say is it's a really good product. We'd love to show you more about it. So just get in touch. And with this, I'd say thank you, and we'll speak soon. Take care.